Right. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Here we are. It is week number 3 coming up today, or tomorrow, and Sunday. We got the Washington Justice Homestead hosted at the Anthem. So, should be a super fun week. We have a couple more games than last week. We have 6 instead of 4. So that is nice. Also, going to be really interesting. Of course, this is the first Justice Homestead. We will see if they have any of the technical issues or difficulties that occurred during the Philly Homestead, because the week ones, New York and Dallas were pretty solid. There wasn't much, but last week there was a lot. I know, as I mentioned before in the recap video, a lot of people were not happy with the technical difficulties, the long pauses between even each round of a map. So we'll see if OWL took note of any of that, and if this week is more smooth, we have less downtime. Because I mean, the people that were complaining about it, they're totally right. I have to agree with them. There was a lot of downtime, way more than the previous couple of seasons. So we will see how Washington does as hosts for the first time. Another little tad bit of news. It is possible with the spreading of the coronavirus, it is entirely possible that Seoul could get canceled. The Homestead in Seoul coming up, week 5, I believe. And if that happened, it would be a huge deal, a very big deal, because as we saw, they already got canceled from China. That's the reason that there's going to be more in Seoul. If they can't even do them there, we're gonna see some significant changes to the schedule coming out. So, interesting thing to keep our eye on. Hopefully, that whole issue is solved. I mean, a lot of people in mainland China have died, so um, hopefully there's a cure for that soon, and we kind of go back to normal, I guess. But anyway, we're talking about Homestead for Washington. We have some very interesting matchups this week. Everyone that we are seeing has been in at least some action this season. A couple of the teams have only played one game. Most of them have played two. So should have some great matches, including the first one tomorrow: New York versus Philly. So two teams that are 2-0. Philly is at the top right now with map differential, so this should be a really good matchup. These teams have had some very fun matchups in the past. The most important being Philly taking out New York in the playoff semifinals of season one. They defeated them. It was a huge upset. It's what got them into the finals versus London, of course, where they would eventually go on to lose. But these are two teams that look very good coming into the season. A couple of new pieces for each team coming in. We've seen some playtime for Who Are You of New York. Hotpa's obviously been starting and playing every map as their new off tank. He's been integrated very well so far. And then when you talk about Philly, you got guys like Alarm as well as Ivy making their debuts for the team. No Fury. I was surprised we didn't see Fury at all last week. Poco is extremely good, but I think Fury's just better. Must be either more comfortable in the meta type thing. I know they've been using some Orisa as well. Maybe Poco's Orisa is just a lot better than Fury's. But whatever the case, Philly, like I said, had a lot of success. They did have a very close match against Justice, though. New York, they lost immediately to the first map to London. Since then, they've won every map. So I favor New York in this matchup. I think they're a bit more talented overall. I think that the majority of their team is more familiar with each other. Nene's playing really well so far. And for me, a lot of times with Philly, they have these moments where it's like just clutch, and their talent allows them to just finish off maps, finish off rounds. Mostly Carpe, but some other players making some massive plays to just kind of catapult them forward to a victory. And Sato had a very good day, but the two teams that they played last week, Florida and Washington, neither of them has nearly the caliber of main tank as Mono. So I think that Sato's effect, where he was very effective the last week, is going to be minimized. They're not at their homestead anymore, so they might be a little bit slow out the gate. They won't feel that same crowd energy. So, like I said, I like New York. I think it's close. I'm gonna go 3-1 here. I think most, if not all, of the maps are competitive. I just like New York's versatility. I think they have a really good idea of the meta. I don't really like the teams that run the Rhine and the Orisa. I don't think it's the stronger comp. I think that's kind of outdated. So, like I said, I like New York here. I just don't think that Carpe and the others. Ivy looked good last week. You know, he looked really solid, but I just don't see them being able to easily overpower New York's DPS. And then when it comes to the tank, I definitely give New York the edge there as well. Hotba's been really, really good on the Diva, so I'm going to take the Excelsior going to 3-0 in this one. And then we have two teams who are off to very poor starts, Boston and Houston. So, an early contest to see who the worst team in the league might be, because they are down there for sure, as well as London, who plays later on Sunday. So I went back and forth with this one. I kept leaning toward Houston, but then when I was thinking, I was like, this is just the kind of game that I feel like Boston wins. And I actually am going to go with Boston in 5. So I feel like with Boston, it's more of a. Both of these teams, I was really, really, really unimpressed by their coaching staff. I thought that their staffs did very poor jobs of preparing them. They didn't really have a good handle of the meta. Um, Plat Chat, which is a like podcast, and they do some other stuff with power rankings and whatnot. Made up of guys like Custa, Reinforce, Sideshow. Sometimes they have like Brent on it. Mr. X was previously on it a lot. I think they talked to Avast as well sometimes on there, and they kind of called out Boston, and I think it was Uprising Academies, like their contenders team. I think their coach responded to them and was talking about how that was the meta for months and months leading up to like the season, and that's why they were playing the Rhine Orisa, and that like New York, just because New York is so good, they made the composition look really bad and a bunch of other stuff like that. And it honestly, it was horrible. It was a horrible response. If I'm upper management and I see my coach post that, I'm considering. I hate to say this, but I'm considering firing him because that shows you have no knowledge of what's happening in the game. Like it was terrible, absolutely horrible. I will try to find the tweets and link them in the description of the video. But yeah, it was about the worst response you could ever see from a coach. There's just bad excuses and just like, no, this shouldn't be okay. And it was like, oh yeah, we got slammed because it's New York and they're the best. Like, what? That's what? I don't know. But I am gonna pick Boston to win this somehow, some way. Like I said, it seems like one of those games that's gonna be super scrappy. Neither team's gonna play that well. There's gonna be mistakes here and there, and Boston just kind of wins these games. And Houston's had really bad history on map fives in the history of their organization. And like I said, they just look dysfunctional. Boston looks less dysfunctional, but just not good, if that makes sense. So I think Houston's gonna probably make more mistakes here. It's a series that could go either way, but I will take Boston. Um, yeah, the thing I'm looking for in this series is just improvement. I need to see improvement from these teams. Like run the right comps. I don't know what the hell they were running. I mean, we got Houston trying to make the Lucio Brig work, and just seeing their tanks get pounded with no help. We saw Boston running the two main tanks the whole entire match. It's just like, come on. Come on. Most of the other teams have a good handle of what's going on. Why do you guys acting like you don't have access to the game and the internet and film and like I don't know. Toilet Bowl, Boston gets a tight victory. Moving on to a much more interesting matchup between two teams who I think are in a similar area. I think Washington's a bit better than Paris right now, and I do think Justice will beat the Eternal. I'm going to say 3-1. There are some things that I've really liked from Eternal though. They made London look real bad, and it's possible that London is just bad. I mean they're towards the bottom of the power rankings as well. But like I said, even in the Toronto game, Paris did some things well. They have a split roster as well. They've got some Koreans, they've got some Europeans, but they've done a better job of combining it than a team like Houston has early on. Like their communication has looked pretty solid. They still do not have Sparkle. They're kind of ace in the hole, but Z's played well on the DPS role. We did not see Soon at all last week one, I should say. So I expect Paris to be competitive in here. Washington, their main problem last week was they had some bad calls at times, and they also had some bad ult usage as a team. But other than that, they did some really good things. Looked dominant against Houston, and even with some mistakes here and there, they took Philly. They made Philly work for it for sure. So, like I said, Washington 3-1. An entertaining matchup though. Paris is a team that I want to see more of because I think they could really fluctuate. They could be a team that gets to top 10, and they could be a team that falls towards the very bottom. So it will be interesting to monitor them going forward. Then we got New York going up against Houston. I'm going to give this a 3-0 for New York. I mean, the way that Houston played last week, unless I see something crazy, a ton of improvement next week against Boston. Yeah, I think this could be a quick match, a blowout. We'll see if it'll be weird seeing Meko play against New York. Again, the last 2 seasons, he played for New York as their off tank. He's the all-time leader in elims in the Overwatch League. But I don't see any way Houston wins this. There were some upsets last year. I mean, like Houston, Valiant taking down Vancouver in the regular season. So anything is possible, but I'm not going to pick it this week. Last week I got kind of punished for picking upsets. So we're gonna go with New York in a pretty easy 3-0. Moving on, Toronto Defiant taking on Philly Fusion. So maybe it's just because I'm a Toronto fan, but this is the most interesting matchup of the entire week for me because, like I said, Toronto, they looked really solid, but they've only played one match. This will be a very good test of how good they actually are. We'll see Beast, a player who everyone was like, okay, we know a lot of these other players. He's coming up from contenders, being on Fusion University. Is he going to play well, or is he going to kind of be that weak link in the team? Because everyone else, like Surefour, Logix, Kariv, we know these people, Kelix, Nevix. But he played really well in their first match. So can he continue that momentum? And then on the other side, Sato had a really nice first week of the season. He was much maligned in seasons 1 when he did play at the end, and then season 2 more so. But he looked really solid last week. Can he continue that matchup, or can he continue that momentum? We'll see it against New York as well as Toronto. So that'll be the big thing for me to keep my eye on. What are the main tanks doing? Are they solidly consistent with their positioning, or are they getting caught out, and are they getting value out of their shatters? But I'm going to take Philly. I think this one goes down to the wire. I think they're still more comfortable with each other. Again, a good amount of that core is together. Toronto, not as much. They're still kind of trying to find their rhythm, and they had a very poor showing on control for the most part against Paris. So I think that will lend itself to Philly, but Defiant will take a couple of maps here, push it to a map 5 before they go down. So that's probably my match to watch out for this week. Obviously, New York and Philly should be great, but that's a more low-key matchup that I think will be entertaining. Then we got London back in action, taking on the Justice. So I think Justice win this one. I think it's relatively easy. I don't think it's super close. I think London could snag a map, particularly the first map. We've seen a little bit of weaknesses from Justice on the kind of brawl maps, and generally teams that are not as talented on paper or like the underdogs, generally they have a better shot on control where it gets more brawly. It's less about setup and really coordinating rather than and it's kind of more like fragging. Where on 2CP, sometimes on a first point of hybrid or like on a second point of something like Havana, you have to be really coordinated to go in and win fights. Otherwise, their defense, because they have intrinsical advantages like the high ground and other factors, you're just going to have a rough time. So London could snag a map there. I don't know. They looked really bad against Paris, so I don't have a ton of faith in them here. But again, super young team. They're kind of like Boston and Houston for me, where I'm gonna try to monitor their progress this week. I was going through the VODs of those three teams from the first couple of weeks: Boston, Houston, and London. I was attempting to make a video about like some of the weaker teams from the first couple of weeks. Um, I ended up scrapping it, but with this week's worth of footage, I think I'll definitely be able to get something that's a lot more instructional in a way. So yeah, those three teams are, it's more of base, like building their foundation, because these teams do not have a foundation. They don't have a structure. Doesn't look like their shot calling is good. Whereas teams like Philly, Toronto, New York, Washington, they have the basics. For them, it's more of the little things, fixing the little things, cleaning stuff up, and really like rising to that upper level of play. So in the end, got Washington winning this one. So, potential 2-0 week for Justice coming. I think it's going to be a 2-0 week for New York as well. Whoever wins that New York Philly matchup has a good shot to do it. So, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. You see any big upsets going down this week? Like I said, if I had to go for like an upset, it would probably be maybe Paris taking down Washington. But we'll see. There is definitely potential for some very very close matchups this week. We did not get a lot last week, so hope you guys enjoyed. Hope you get to watch a decent amount of the games this weekend, and I hope you have yourselves a fantastic weekend, whatever you end up doing. And then I'll see you in the next one.